Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. It's draft week. What an exciting time in the NBA. We've got a ton to go over today. I'm Trevor Lane. He's Keith Smith. Keith, how you doing? Are you rested and ready for the madness that is to come over the next few weeks?
Rested, sure. Ready? I have no idea. I think so. I finished my last major team off-season preview for Spot Track that posted today. I've got a couple more pre-free agency pieces to write for them, but for the most part, we're plugging along there. I'm going to try something new over there this year. Every deal that is signed, I'm going to write something about it. So I'm going to try to do all of them. I'm going to try to write at least a paragraph about everybody, a little quick hit analysis there. So we'll see. I'm probably an insane person, and who knows? I'll probably be more gray
That's
than
ambitious.
I am right now. But yeah, by the end of it, but we'll see. It's gray is fine. I just don't need to lose any more hair. That's the battle I'm fighting right now. So going gray, I'm okay with. It's the going bald. I'm not so cool with. So if by the end of July, if I'm rocking a hat all the time, everybody will know why.
Then we know why. We know the offseason got to you, and that's what happened. Well, hopefully it winds up being a fun and relatively stress-free offseason. You know there's going to be stress, but that's part of what makes it fun, is where we get excited about all the stuff that's going on. And I guess, we've got a million things to talk about today. Let's start here, though, as Studio Stu decides to grace the background here. He's stalking through.
Yeah,
right?
Like shadow.
The shadow?
It was ominous.
I know. He's like Bat Cat back there or something like that.
Yeah, wish we still had like the Bobcats around. I would have been like, start with the Bobcats topic.
Yeah, right. I think that's the only time anyone has ever said, I wish we still had the Bobcats around.
That's probably true. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, let's start here. Scottie Barnes gets a 5-year max extension with the Toronto Raptors. This is part of the benefit of guys being able to negotiate with their own teams right now during this window. Is this a good deal for the Raptors? 5 years going all in. Scottie Barnes, this is our guy moving forward. Do you like this?
I think when you very publicly say you won't put him in trade talks for Kevin Durant, and then you trade away the other two all-star level forwards that you had in Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, you have to do this. And I have no problem with this for Toronto. Every team can support a minimum of one player on a full max salary. Some can support two, maybe even three-ish, depending on where you're at, but definitely one or two is fine. And he's a great player. I think it went a little unnoticed how strong of a year Scottie Barnes had. I know he made the All-Star game, but I still think people didn't necessarily appreciate it because the Raptors were in the midst of a really down year. But he's a big part of what they're trying to build back around there in Toronto. So, yeah, getting him locked up for the full max is huge. He'll either get the 25% of the cap max. That's if he is just the guy he's been, is an all-star level guy, but no further than that. He'll get 25% if he makes All-NBA, or far less likely wins MVP or Defensive Player of the Year. He'll get the 30% of the cap max. So that's where you may see a little bit of different reporting in the numbers. But either way, he's going to be on a max deal.
That's where, we make the point all the time that not all first-round picks are alike. Not all max contracts are alike. Scottie Barnes coming off a rookie deal, he's a 25% max guy. His max is going to look different than a max for, say, LeBron James, who has been in the NBA for roughly 57 years at this point. This is a different
year.
Right? This is a lesser max deal. Given 25% is probably, he could make first team make a all NBA team. I don't know if I want to go to say first team, but he could make all NBA. But I do think there's a pretty decent shot it just sticks as a 25% max. And I think that's a pretty good value for Toronto, given what he provides for that club. And it's going to be a big summer. It's a big summer for a lot of teams. The Toronto Raptors, certainly a team that's in transition. So now they've got certainty here. They've got Scottie Barnes locked up, and they know kind of what one of their key future pieces is going to look like.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, now next, I assume we'll probably get news maybe before free agency even officially opens. Emmanuel Quickly is there as a restricted free agent. He seems like kind of the next domino to fall for the Raptors. Bruce Brown's team option is coming up due here in the next few days, so that will be something we'll be looking at as well. Do they pick it up? That's the way everything's been trending. Then maybe a trade comes for him after. So yeah, a lot of stuff coming out of Toronto, but getting that young core locked up, that's definitely an important start to this summer.
Yeah, the expectation is they'll pick up that option on Bruce Brown's contract and then use him as a trade piece somewhere this summer. Not the only news we've got to get into today, though. The Cavs make their decision, and Keith, your Windhorse fingers connecting the dots. When I saw this come out, I went, up. There it is. James Borrego to the Pistons is going to happen now, just like Keith predicted. Kenny Atkinson winds up going to the Cavs. And I guess before we get into the Pistons side of all of this, what are your thoughts on Kenny Atkinson leaving Golden State? Now will become a head coach again in the NBA for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I'm excited to see him get a second chance there. He was a little bit run out of town with Brooklyn, with a team he had built up as they rebuilt from the disastrous trade with the Celtics. He was a big part of rebuilding that team and getting them to play above their head. And then the Stars came in, and the Stars didn't want him as the coach, and basically got him run out of town before the bubble started. And Jacques Vaughn took over, and he lasted for a little while there himself before he got ousted. And now we're moving in a different direction in Brooklyn as well. But happy to see Kenny Atkinson get a second chance here. Cavs should be a pretty good team. For another story that came out that I know we're going to touch on all the shooting guard stuff here in a moment, but Donovan Mitchell is supposedly looks like they feel pretty good about an extension. Everybody around the league seems to have leaned into that's going to be how this goes.
Yeah.
So Atkinson comes in, and if they hold firm on, we're not trading Garland, we're not trading Allen, they've got to extend Mobley. I expect his extension to look a lot like the Scottie Barnes one did. Then all of a sudden you're sitting here with, this is a pretty good team with real expectations, and hopefully Kenny Atkinson can help them reach those expectations.
And I think it's noteworthy that you're really not hearing very many Team X pursuing Donovan Mitchell stories anymore. Yeah. It's more, if he's available, this team would be interested, but it's seeming that's very much died down as teams are expecting Donovan Mitchell to re-sign with the Cavs, which then throws Darius Garland into question. Will he follow through and demand a trade? Will the Cavs grant that trade request? What would that look like? That could be a pretty big trade chip on the block potentially this summer if the Cavs decide that they're going to trade him. So far, they've said, no, he's one of our core pieces. We're going to hang on to him, even if he doesn't want to play next to Donovan Mitchell anymore. So that'll be something to monitor. But now we do have some certainty here with Kenny Atkinson, maybe more certainty coming soon with Donovan Mitchell. And then we'll see what Cleveland decides to do with Darius Garland.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big summer for Cleveland just because decisions need to be made. And we'll see if, let's say the news breaks here in the next couple of days that Mitchell is signing that extension. We'll see, is that followed by a Darius Garland trade request? Because if it is, then that becomes a whole different thing.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's go here. This is summer of Paul George, but not just Paul George. There are many shooting guards, even with Malik Monk already off the board. There's a number of shooting guards that are out there on the market. There's a number of teams that will be interested in those shooting guards. Let's start with Paul George, though, because, Keith, it feels like every day we're either getting an update that some team is definitely totally 100% interested in trading for or signing Paul George, or they are definitely totally 100% not interested in Paul George at all. And in some cases, it's the same teams going back and forth and back and forth. What do you make of all of the smoke around Paul George right now?
Yeah, we just need the, maybe we'll sign him. Like then that they would complete the row there for bingo. Right. I really don't know what to make of all this stuff other than I do think it is more a greater chance that he leaves the Clippers than there has been at any other point in this entire run. Here, it was, when he didn't extend, we said every day doesn't extend. That increases the likelihood that he moves on. And now we're in a spot we're hearing some other options. It was put out there. Mark Stein was one of the people I saw put it out there, as well as Brian Windhorst was Paul George may opt in and then ask for a trade versus anything else, because that just makes the market wider for him for that, because then the teams that would be looking to sign him could still trade for him. They could trade for him as part of an extended trade possibly, or they could trade for him, wait 6 months and extend him after. That is wide open. So if he opts out, you're really talking cap space teams and maybe a handful of other teams, because executing a sign and trade gets very, very difficult in that spot with the various apron rules and the like that would be triggered. So I think an opt in and then trade maybe is on the table. We'll see. Maybe that'll end up being as Stu is on the table. Obviously, he's ready.
Yeah, he's ready.
As we'll see if this turns into Paul George to New York. Maybe that one
I've seen that.
out, and does that have some kind of impact in a domino on OG Anunoby? Then does he become more available if you go a slightly different direction? So
then we get OG to the Sixers.
Could be, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, and that was something that was came out over the weekend, was Paul George will be the first domino to fall. Mark Stein had that. Like when he goes and does what he does, that's going to probably trigger a lot of other stuff around the league. So that's going to be fun to watch here as this turns into an episode of Front Office Overtime. It's just me and Stu. It's
Stu.
He's like, here it is. Keith and Stu show, Stu and Keith. So.
But by the way, guys, if you haven't checked out Overtime, Keith has been going live in the evenings, just taking some questions and breaking down some of the different off-season possibilities and things like that. So make sure you guys do check that out. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. He's not going live at the exact same time every single day. So that way you get notified when he goes live. You can jump in, throw in any questions that you want about the cap, about moves that could potentially be made, all that kind of stuff. It's been great seeing the response to that show. So guys, make sure you do check that out. I know that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been. I can't believe, the number of people who tuned in on a Saturday and Sunday night, which tells me there's a whole lot of people like me out there who have nothing better to do than sit around and think about the NBA offseason, which is great, right? Hey, all the nerds and geeks and weirdos welcome here that love this stuff as much as we do. I'm fired up for it. So yeah, it was great the first couple. I'll be doing it again tonight if you're listening to this in the day on Monday, at some point Monday night. When I can fit it in, some point Tuesday. Won't do on Wednesday night, because Wednesday night we'll obviously be covering the draft and we'll be live for several hours that night. But then we'll give it probably Thursday. We'll see. Might do a post draft one. We'll see. But we'll be doing some of these leading right up to the start of free agency, and then free agency nights starting on the 30th. Trevor and I will go live at some point in the late evening, early morning hours here in the East Coast, and we'll be breaking down everything that happened that day in NBA free agency. So it feels like we are full on drinking from the fire hose right now, where it is
right now. Yep.
It's like everything is happening. So that'll be fun.
It's that time of year. 'Tis the season. One of the things that I think is fascinating about the Paul George situation, before we move on to the other guys, the NBA, their new collective bargaining agreement, they realized that guys like Steve Ballmer, making it cost more by adding in luxury tax penalties, increasing luxury tax penalties, doesn't matter when money no longer matters to a person like Steve Ballmer. He's got so much money to where money's kind of lost value to him, right? So you have to inhibit teams' ability to actually build out their rosters. That makes me think, with Paul George wanting a bigger contract than apparently what the Clippers are willing to give, is this maybe our first true test of the new collective bargaining agreement? And if the Clippers are not willing to spend the extra money to keep Paul George because of the roster building ramifications that they would be hit with, is this our first test of the CBA and it's working? Is that maybe this is what we're looking at? I don't know where it goes. Maybe 30 minutes from now, Paul George might agree with the Clippers and everything is set. We don't know. But if he winds up on another team, isn't this kind of what the NBA was trying to do with the new CBA, making so that teams had to make very, very difficult decisions and ultimately talent would be distributed across the NBA?
Yeah, the Clippers and the Warriors, right? We've got a Warriors topic we're going to get into down the line, but those two teams are really facing a lot of tough situations right now. Both are trying to, I hate to call it fiscal responsibility, because you're absolutely right. They don't care about the money portion of it. They're, I'll say, roster responsibility. That's like what they're trying, or cap responsibility. They are trying to be cautious to not limit themselves in their roster building ability as they move forward. And right, both are in similar places, older rosters, some players who have injury concerns, some players who are starting to age out. You don't want to be in a spot where it is, man, we're in year 3 or 4 of this contract and we still have 2 more years to go of this deal that are locked in for this player who can't play anymore. We're not very good. And now we're in a spot where, we're just kind of stuck. Both sides are doing it. So I think you're absolutely right. I think to at least some level, the Clippers and Warriors, 2 teams that were very directly targeted with this new CBA.
Yes.
We have to stop what they're doing, are very much, they're in a place where now it is starting to hit home already for those 2 teams.
Now, it's not just Paul George out there. Klay Thompson, you were just talking about the Warriors, DeMar DeRozan, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, with Malik Monk off the board. These are the main shooting guards that are still out there on the market. And you've got a number of teams that are going to pursue these guys that are going to be interested. Notably, the Orlando Magic would be a great fit for any of those guys, really, particularly those guys that can provide some three-point shooting for them. But this is going to be interesting to watch because these will be the biggest dominoes in free agency, perhaps on the trade market, depending on how their incumbent teams decide to play this. If we see some sign-and-trade situations, maybe it's an opt-in and trade or something like that. But I think these guys are kind of the core forward to really keep an eye on at the 2-guard spot, and they very well may dictate how the rest of the market is going to go, right? If we see a guy like, if Paul George winds up taking, say, a 3-year deal somewhere or a 2-year deal somewhere or something like that, I don't know if I would predict that. Maybe that's more the case for a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope or someone like that, but that will also be a sign of how the new CBA is affecting teams where they're a little bit more cautious about giving out those long-term deals. But those are the 4 guys that we're really keeping an eye on at the 2-guard position. And I think they're going to be big factors this summer. When we look at the biggest moves, I think those guys are going to be at the heart of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just at that one position, as we go a little deeper into it, you have guys like Gary Trent and Buddy Hield and maybe Bruce Brown. Malik Monk off the board. He re-signed with the Kings, so that's not going to be a player who's available at that spot. But yeah, we've got a lot of guys who are in that range that are going to be major benefactors from teams just maybe looking around and saying, all right, we didn't land one of the big guys, but we still have a hole on the wing, and we have some money to spend. Gary Trent Jr. looks a little bit better. Buddy Hield looks a little bit better.
Yeah.
Even a guy like Malik Beasley, who ended up playing for the minimum and put together a pretty nice year in Milwaukee, he's a guy you could see a team go after. So I think we're in a very interesting spot with that position where I think there's going to be a lot of turnover, a lot of changes, where it might be even kind of one of those like this guy went here, this guy went here, this guy went here. And then when we look back, we're like, oh, they all just kind of traded around spots. Right. But I think that may be how that plays out. And that's an important position for teams because that position can go one of 2 ways. You can either play up and guard a lot of the wing players, or you can play down a little bit, maybe be a primary ball handler and run some of the offense and those kind of things. And that's where we're seeing teams with those specific guys getting. Look, I have a friend today. Carly's checking. He doesn't always check in during the show.
It's the pet show today.
That's it. It is. But yeah, we're in a real spot here where I think we may see a lot of stuff. Go a lot of different directions for a lot of these teams. Where that's going to be a position to watch now moving forward.
Who's just given that Orlando tends to be the team that we look to? I mean, of course, we talk about the Philadelphia 76ers a lot in their cap space, but in terms of a team that clearly the piece they need, it's a 2-guard. Who do you think is the best fit to land in Orlando out of the group that's available?
Yeah, I'm going to take Paul George off the board because I just don't think that's going to happen.
It's too easy.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's Klay Thompson. But for me, it would be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Because imagine him and Suggs defensively together in that backcourt. And then just the way he shoots it. And he is also somebody who his entire run here with the Lakers and with the Nuggets has been playing off of other players. He's really good at finding open spots. He's one of the best in the league at lifting into open space as another player drives and pulling his man with him and those sort of things. He's also a pretty good cutter. So if you're Orlando, who's going to run a lot of the offense through Banchero and Franz Wagner, you can do a lot of different stuff with a guy like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as a spot-up shooter, as a cutter, as an occasional little bit of a ball handler, and then defensively, man, you would be lights out. So that's somebody I would love to see them pursue, and that's the rumor. I might have stepped on a future topic here. I can't remember because we've got so many, but that we could see it go that way, where it is KCP, there it's Philly and Magic are looking. Kind of don't think he leaves Denver. I think he probably gets something done with the Nuggets, because why would you leave that situation? But if it starts to get a little, we don't want to pay that much, and they've got their own tax and apron issues, then maybe it does happen.
All right. Interestingly, another rumor that's out there right now, the Wizards, who traded away Daniel Gafford, now could wind up being a landing spot for Mitchell Robinson. The Knicks potentially looking at the market for him. Got a pretty good contract, $14 million this season. I believe it declines next season to like $12 million or so. I'll pull the number in just a moment. But the Wizards have some interest in Mitchell Robinson. I'm trying to make heads or tails of this, because Mitchell Robinson doesn't seem like the type of player that the Wizards should be targeting right now. To me, I think they should be looking more young players, building up, not guys who are in their prime, ready to win right now and better to be contributors. I know they could use a big, but what are your thoughts if the Wizards do go after Mitchell Robinson? Then what's the price tag in order to land him? What do the Knicks want in return in order to send him to Washington?
Yeah, it's very funny for the Washington side of this. They have forwards and wings for days on that roster. I mean, they have Kuzma, Avdia, Coulibaly, Kispert. I'm going to forget guys if I don't look. They've got Jordan Poole, who I know people are down on, but you have a guy like him there. You have Landry Shamet there. So they've got a lot of guys that can play the forward wing 2-guard position. What they don't have is point guards, and they don't have centers. Like, their two centers right now on the roster are Marvin Bagley and Rashawn Holmes.
Right.
Fine, right? Not the end of the world if those are your guys, but that's where they've got to find some long-term solutions here in Washington, because those guys are just they're okay, but they're not that, they are not necessarily like the guys you're building around. So I get it. I think this is probably a opportunity cost thing. If we could get Mitchell Robinson kind of on the cheap, why not? Fills a need for us. He's on a pretty decent contract. He's young enough to fit in with if we fast track things slightly and let's go. But I just don't necessarily see the straight up trade that would work there. I think that would probably have to be the Knicks are doing a bigger trade, and this becomes part of a 3-teamer. And the Wizards are like, hey, we'll take on Mitchell Robinson and send out, I don't know, Marvin Bagley's expiring contract, because that's pretty close to matching salary, or whatever it may be.
Like the Cavs with Jared Allen and the James Harden trade with the Nets a few years back, kind of like that. I do think, though, one thing that's interesting is if they're going after a center on the market, I don't think this changes anything with the draft, but they are projected to be the team. I think most people believe they're going to get Alex Sarr with the number 2 pick. I mean, again, if it's me, I'm not running the Wizards, but if it's me and I get Alex Sarr, I'm funneling my minutes to Alex Sarr. And if it needs to be a Marvin Bagley or something behind him, fine. If you're going to go trade for Mitchell Robinson, you're going to need to play Mitchell Robinson. I know you need help at the center position. And look, the Wizards need a lot of help everywhere, and perhaps they just see value here. But again, unless they've decided they're not taking Alex Sarr at number 2, maybe this is a smokescreen so teams think they're not taking Alex Sarr at number 2. You never know this time of year. But if I get Alex Sarr and I'm the Washington Wizards, I don't think I'm pursuing Mitchell Robinson. I'm just focusing on Alex Sarr. Give me some kind of bridge bigs that can play behind Sarr, that can spell him for some minutes. But I'm doing everything I can to develop Sarr if I'm Washington, if that winds up being the pick at number 2.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. There is a world too where maybe they see him more as a 4. They're like, hey, we want to put kind of somebody else behind or beside him in a supersized lineup up front, and that's where we'll go. Because I've had teams tell me, keep an eye on Kuzma. He's probably getting traded this summer. I don't know how much stock I put in that. They seem to still like him, but it wouldn't shock me either. He's 29, and this is a rebuilding team. I think, again, why did they re-sign him? Because they got him on a pretty good value. There was no reason to not re-sign him on the contract they got him for. So I think this is Wizards are taking the right approach of we are multiple years into a rebuilding, or let me rephrase all of that. We are 1 year into a multi-year rebuild. We don't need to rush things. We don't need to move. But if the right opportunity is there, we're going to jump on it and try to snag a player out of it. So let's see. Let's continue to watch. They're going to be a fun team to watch them try to develop this together. And by the way, not on our list, Troy Weaver headed to Washington. He's going to link back up with Michael Winger and Will Dawkins, who we worked with in Oklahoma City to great success with the Thunder under Sam Presti. So that trio is going to be working together. I think his official title is senior advisor, but the reporting all called out, his great work as a scout and finding young talent and all that, which for all the things he might have failed with the Pistons, I think we can say he did get some pretty good young talent in the door in Detroit.
For sure. Keith, one thing before we leave the Wizards, not this summer, but next summer will be the summer of the team option. Right? Look at all the red all the way down there, the way down their roster here. They'll have some decisions to make there coming up. All right, let's jump over.
Somebody probably should be trading for Rashawn Holmes or maybe Marvin Bagley, because apparently that's how you make the NBA Finals is you go and trade for a former Wizard center, Kristaps Porzingis and Daniel Gafford. So get it done. There's your ticket to the finals. Trade for Holmes or Bagley.
That's it. That's all you got to do. Tobias Harris drawing interest around the NBA. Keith, a lot of people are down on Tobias Harris, and I think it stems from him not living up to his contract in terms of how much his contract is worth. We talk about this, that sometimes the negativity around a player is focused more on how much bang for the buck he provides on his contract versus what the guy is as a player. I think Tobias Harris on his contract last year vastly overpaid. If you get him, though, on the right deal, I think he could be a solid addition for a team, especially an NBA that needs guys that can do the things that he can do, especially from the power forward position. So what are your thoughts on Tobias Harris, the best landing spots for him?
Yeah, the teams we're hearing the reporting was Dallas, Detroit, New Orleans, two other teams. I'll find them. For him, it was Mavericks, Pistons, Pelicans, Spurs, and Jazz are all teams that are supposedly showing interest in Tobias Harris. Now, none of these teams are going to get him for anywhere near a max. I'm thinking this is probably a mid-level-ish type of deal because a couple of those teams don't even have cap space, so they would have to go the mid-level route to get him. I think you're exactly right. I think Tobias Harris on a max or near max deal, it's crazy overpay. He's never going to deliver value on that. Tobias Harris for $12 to $15 million a year. Sure, I think that's fine because then all of a sudden it is Tobias Harris only scored 10 points tonight, or he kind of was invisible out there. You're like, all right, well, at least we're not paying him the max, and you move on to the next one. So I think his fit as somebody who can score and shoot are good for a lot of teams, but he's ideally, if he's got to be your fourth or fifth best guy, and then that's how you kind of build it out from there. If he's anything more than that, then it starts. You're probably going to be a little rough unless you're number 1 and 2 are absolutely amazing players. So, but I'm with you. I think he gets way too much hate, but I kind of get it when it's like people like he makes the max, but it's not his fault. That's the team's fault, not his.
Sometimes we have to separate the player from the contract. And I think Tobias Harris is one of those cases that the negativity about his contract has bled through into the analysis of him as a basketball player. I think when he's on that right contract, he'll be just fine. So will be interesting to see what he gets out there in the market, but I'm not surprised that the teams are poking around here, seeing what they can get him for, because he is a guy that fits into the modern NBA very, very well, can shoot outside a little bit, can give you a little bit in a lot of different places, rebounding, of course, but he's not great, but he's a nice rotation player for somebody. So he'll wind up somewhere. And maybe it is the Mavs, who we need to talk about right now, because they're looking to trade Tim Hardaway Jr., as confirmed by Tim Hardaway Sr., who said that they want to change the scenery as well. Keith, at this point, I would be shocked if Tim Hardaway Jr. is a Dallas Maverick in come August, say.
I'll be shocked if he's a Dallas Maverick come July 7th.
Yes,
second day after the moratorium. I kind of already written it in my head already. Welcome to Detroit, Tim Hardaway Jr. Welcome back to Michigan, where you played your college ball at the University of Michigan. Here we go, because it just feels like that's probably where it's headed. I don't see any of the other cap space teams necessarily jumping on him to be like, yeah, let's definitely go that way. It doesn't really seem to be a fit in Orlando or Oklahoma City or Utah. And I don't know that San Antonio, they've got a bunch of guys who play as off-ball wings. So I'm not sure that's where that's going to go for him. So maybe Detroit. Detroit, as Trajan Langdon said in his opener, like, we're open to taking on contracts, but they need to be contracts for players who can play. And they're looking at shooting, and that's presumably that's what he would add. That he seems like that's what he can still do is shoot threes. So we'll see with Tim Hardaway Jr. But yeah, he's going to be gone. And part of the reason Dallas wants to do this is they're looking to move him off, not take anything back or take very little back, to open up the access to the full MLE, because I think they're thinking that's what it's going to take, or really close, to re-sign Derrick Jones Jr. And they're trying to make sure they have enough ability to get Derrick Jones Jr. back there, on a much bigger contract than the minimum that he played for last year.
That's the downside. When you sign a player to a minimum contract, if you have a guy that hits, keeping that player can be really tough, because you don't get those full bird rights to go ahead and spend what it takes in order to keep the player. So if you do happen to take a chance on a guy on a veteran minimum contract and it works out, suddenly you put yourself in a difficult position in order to actually keep that player for the future. But for Derrick Jones Jr., he's going to get a big payday. And depending on what the cost is to move Tim Hardaway Jr., if you say, hey, this guy, Derrick Jones Jr., was so critical to our run this last year, if the price of keeping him is a mid-level exception contract plus whatever it costs in order to move Tim Hardaway, okay, if we're getting a true 3-and-D wing that is one of the better guys at it now in the NBA, we'll gladly do that.
Yep, without a doubt. Yeah, that's just how the game gets played at this point, right? It starts to turn into, it's just, well, what can we do to help you? How does this help us in the end? And here we go. And obviously, yeah, I want to make sure too, if Detroit's taking on Tim Hardaway Jr., they're not just going to take him. They're going to need probably a second-round pick, I would guess. He doesn't make that much money. So it'd probably be like a second-round pick for their trouble of doing that. For the Pistons, it's fine. So you spend like 16, 17 million on Tim Hardaway Jr. of your 61 million in cap space. Whatever, you're probably not going to spend all that anyway in free agency. So get a guy who can play for you. If it doesn't work out, he's an unrestricted free agent the next year, and you kind of just keep the ball moving a little bit in that direction.
Right. All right, let's jump over to the Warriors. Chris Paul, $30 million contract for next season. I can't imagine any team actually wanting to pay him that money for next season. However, it's non-guaranteed. So the Warriors, we've been talking about how the Warriors could actually open up some space by simply waiving Chris Paul, maybe moving on from Kevon Looney, using that money to give Klay Thompson. But they could also have Chris Paul or opt into a portion of that contract or all of that contract and use it in a trade. So if they push back the guarantee date, what does that tell you about the Warriors and their plans with Chris Paul? Does that tell you that a trade is indeed in the works?
Yeah, it tells me you got a little something cooking. We're going to get a first piece to the puzzle today is Kevon Looney's date. He's $3 million of his $8 million contract is guaranteed already, but that jumps to the full $8 million. All the reporting over the weekend by Anthony Slater and other folks who cover the Warriors has been they're going to guarantee Kevon Looney's contract, and that makes sense, right? There's $5 million is not enough to fully do what you need to do. You're probably just kind of getting some work done with that. So keep Kevon Looney around. But if they push back Chris Paul's date, that tells me maybe not for the full 30 million, but maybe it is, hey, we need 20 million in matching salary, so we're going to guarantee him 20 million. And maybe some other team says, all right, we're hopping out of this deal at 20 million. We're going to waive him. We'll eat that. Maybe there's a 3-team trade where he goes to one of the cap space teams. They do it, but that gives them a little bit more optionality, because then the Warriors can do kind of whatever it is they need to do as far as guaranteeing some of his deals. So I've got my eye on that one for sure. If we get news of they've amended their guarantee date, that tells me the Warriors have a little more than just we're clearing salary to get under the tax going on there in Golden State.
And they've been named as maybe a team to watch in the Paul George chase. So, that's something to keep an eye on. Could they use Chris Paul's contract in that type of situation, maybe in a 3-team trade or something like that? So there's certainly a team to keep an eye on. They're going to try to be creative with that contract. I think the end result regardless of what happens, whether he just gets waived by the Warriors or he gets sent somewhere else. I think the end result will be Chris Paul on the free agent market. I could see him getting sent somewhere else, and that team just decides to eat the contract, whatever portion of it gets guaranteed, and then you move on, and he will wind up being a free agent in the next few weeks.
I agree. And so 2 thoughts on that with the Paul George one. That would definitely be via the opt-in and trade method, because a sign and trade for the Warriors gets way too messy for them to try to acquire him that way. But yeah, opt-in and trade, go. You can definitely do some stuff with that. And then I think the only way Chris Paul maybe doesn't get waived is if, let's say, he lands in like San Antonio and they're like, yeah, for 1 year we can pay you even the full $30 million. We'll pay you that, and we'll have you kind of come in here and run our offense and help mentor our young players and get them in the right position game after game. Maybe that's the way it goes. But yeah, if it's anywhere else, probably ultimately we see him get waived, team eats whatever they need to eat out of that deal. And then Chris Paul moves on to signing with whoever he's going to sign with. Thought it was a little interesting that some of the reporting is he wants to play in LA. We know that part of it to be true, but that both LA teams are kind of like, maybe. Don't seem to have a ton of real interest in it. And I think that's probably they've just kind of moved in other directions now compared to, 10 years ago or more when it was like, the Clippers had him, but the Lakers really wanted him and all that stuff. It's like, we're all at different points in our life, right? Like that's the old friends are like, oh, we're both finally single. And it's like, yeah, but not for you. Like, see you later.
I love it. Relationship analogies here on the NBA front office show. I can understand why teams would say, you know what, especially if it's a team like the Lakers or the Clippers, where you've already got some injury concerns and things of that nature. You're probably better off if you can find a younger point guard, because you're not getting to steal your phrase, Keith, he's more name than game at this point in his career. And I think he can still help a team. I think he can still be a good addition somewhere. But if you've got the option to get one of my favorite names that's out there, Chris Dunn, right? Like if you have an option of getting him or Chris Paul, I'm going to lean towards the younger guy that could. And look, is he anywhere near the player Chris Paul is over the course of his career? No, nowhere close. Chris Paul is a Hall of Famer. But in 2024, Chris Paul versus some of these younger guys out there, it starts to become more of a real question. And I could see why teams would opt to go with a younger player given their situations.
Yeah, now if I'm the Lakers and it's like Chris Paul for the minimum and I have an open roster spot, done all day. Come on in, man. Like, let's go, because that's like a no-cost flyer. If for some reason he's like, he starts, I need to play 30 minutes and becomes a problem, you just cut him and move on to the next guy. But yeah, if it's like, I need 8 million or I need your MLE or something like that, you're absolutely right. There are better options at this point than Chris Paul. Even if I'm with you, I think he can still help the team, either spot starter, 20-minute a night backup, something like that. But yeah, for the most part, we'll see where he goes. But I don't know. Man, I feel like every team, it really is true, because the way I process this stuff, I'm so curious to see what all 30 teams do. But there are so many teams where I'm like, whoa, like I could really see being like, holy cow, like they did it. Like they did this thing that we didn't think they would really do. And the Warriors are definitely one of those teams.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they'll be one to keep an eye on. And this is part of why the NBA offseason just dominates. There's so many teams that we can go, well, you got to keep your eye, because you never know, this team might do something. Oh, but that team might do something big. So many questions out there, so much drama, so much fun. The Mavs.
I will say one thing. Sorry, before we do this last topic. Good for the sport, but bad for us that there's not as many completely ignorant and dumb teams as there used to be. Because it was like those teams was like, well, they're going to do something stupid, and I can't wait to be all over it. And now it's like we just don't have those teams anymore. Like everybody's gotten so much smarter about how they run stuff that it's like
Chicago.
Yeah, that is true. We did.
I thought about this the other day.
Okay.
Are the Bulls the new Kangs?
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about? Because for a long time, the Kings, especially over online, in the social media sphere, it was the Kangs, because they were going to do stupid stuff all the time, and they just couldn't stop themselves from tripping over their own 2 feet. Is that the Chicago Bulls now, and I'm sorry, Bulls fans, I apologize.
Yeah, they might. They might be. Yeah, they might be. Because at least with the Kings, too, you always had the sense of they're trying so hard to break that playoff drought. So there was like, all right, I could kind of get taking real chances on some of the stuff, even if they were some of the dumbest chances they've ever taken. But the Bulls, it's like, let's go play in tournament. Like, what are we doing? Like, man, they might be. That's a good call out. Yeah, they may be. I think there's a handful of other teams that could be put. I mean, the Pistons we're in fresh start territory, but they're pretty rough there. So yeah, let's see. But yeah, man, that's a good one. Let's give the Bulls the benefit of the doubt for about 2 more weeks, and then
we'll see what happens.
Then we'll make a ruling if they, if they do some real ignorant stuff this summer, then we'll be all over it.
What's ironic is that it now seems like one of the prime landing spots, maybe the favorite landing spot for Zach LaVine, is Sacramento. So we'll see what goes on there.
I wonder how true that is now that they have Monk back. I mean, maybe you're thinking you send Kevin Huerter out because you probably would have to get to the matching salary, and you run with a three guard backcourt of Fox, Monk, and LaVine. That's pretty good. And I said this the other day. I don't think it was on this show, but hey, if you're the Kings, if you're like, look, with Sabonis as our starting big, we're probably never going to be a top 10 defensive team. Why not be an absolute offensive machine? And if you could get LaVine in there, LaVine, Fox, Sabonis, Monk, like, you're going to be hard to guard for sure.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to Jeremy Grant. It would make a lot of sense, I think, for the Blazers to move him. I'm a little bit concerned about the contract moving forward. Just it's a lot of money. It's not like a max here, but still, for a 30-year-old kind of second or third tier wing type player, he's not one of your top level guys. Still a very good player, but making $30 million this season, $32 million the season after that, $34 million the following season. Obviously doesn't fit the timeline for Portland, but the Mavs checked in on potentially a Jeremy Grant trade. So when we talk about the Mavs as maybe a landing spot for Tobias Harris, here's another wing that they could look at targeting in Jeremy Grant as well. I don't know that Portland moves him. I think they should. I don't know that they're going to, but if he's on the market, I think there's a number of teams that at least should be interested, but I'd be fascinated to see what the price winds up being, given how many years are committed to him and how much we're hearing about teams only offering, say, 2-year deals due to the new CBA rather than wanting to commit long-term salary.
Yeah, I will say this. A minimum of 2 of the top 6 players on their cap sheet are going to get traded this summer. Portland's over the tax. They cannot be a tax team this bad. So for those not watching, those top 6 players are DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams III, and Matisse Thybulle. Essentially, everybody who's not on a rookie deal. A couple of these other guys aren't on rookie deals, but they're on like minimum type deals. So I think at least 2 of those 6 go. With the Mavs, this could be a place where Tim Hardaway Jr. goes, not out of need, not out of necessity from Portland's side, but just, hey, we take on his 16, 17 million for the rest of the year and another contract that's similar-ish in size. And now we're out of Jeremy Grant's contract long-term. We still got some more work to do this year. I think that could come with a Brogdon, more or less a salary dump, or Robert Williams, or maybe even a Thybulle move. But we can make the other move we need to make, get out of the tax. We clear up our books long-term because now we're down to like Ayton and not much left if they can go that direction. So they have the opportunity here to move pretty well in, do some things. And I think what's really important too is you could do some of this stuff and you should net pretty good returns because these are all guys who can play too. Yeah. So you're not talking about, well, we're having attached picks or anything like that. None of even the Grant one, it's longer than I think people would like, but it's not under 4 years or anything like that. Yeah, it's right. It's fine. You know, we're talking by the end, you're at 20% of the cap contract. Like it's not great, but it's not going to kill you.
It's not. I think that will depress his value to some degree. Like if he was on I would think he would have more trade value if his contract had 2 seasons remaining instead of 4. Sure. right? I think that would be the case, but especially given his age, he's already 30, and that last year being a player option 2 doesn't help.
I think his value goes like this, then dips slightly, then it'll come back up when there's only a year left. Then it'll come back up because expiring contracts are always valuable to someone for some reason with that. So
if you're an opposing, I guess a lot of it is need dependent, but who are the most attractive options out of that group of 6?
For me, it's Brogdon or Simons.
Yeah.
Simons, if I need a little bit of a long-term piece. Brogdon, if I need one guy to put me over the top for next year, I'd go after Malcolm Brogdon. He won the 6th Man of the Year 2 years ago.
Especially on an expiring.
But yeah, exactly. Expiring contract. So if it doesn't work out, you kind of shrug and move on. But Simons, I don't know. I think Anthony Simons is a guy who, when he is in a place where he can just be a guy, I think everything will look a lot better with him. I really like his game quite a bit.
And there's so many teams right now out there that are willing to move first-round picks in this year's draft or future drafts in order to win right now. A lot of these picks these players you could look at and say, this is a win now piece that could help somebody.
Yep.
So I think if the Blazers are willing to say, hey, we're going to get, in terms of salary matching, we'll get a guy that's not as good, but we're going to get some future draft capital back, or maybe even a pick in this year's draft back. If that's the goal, and I think it should be, I think there's going to be deals to be made for some of these players at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the one guy who's not going to get moved is probably Ayton.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, I think let's see what they do at the draft. Maybe they draft a young center. Maybe they get Klingon and they're like, hey, who wants DeAndre Ayton? Let's figure out a trade here. But yeah, this Blazers team, again, when you get to Scoot Henderson on down on this list, which is basically all their rookie guys, if you're not watching and you're just listening, anybody above that's a veteran, I hope you're renting in Portland and not you didn't buy, because your time there may not be very long.
Right. All right. Well, it's an exciting time of the year. Make sure that you are subscribing to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts as well. Keith is going to go live later tonight and take on some questions too, some direct questions from you guys. So again, make sure you turn on those notifications so you get notified when he goes live. We'll see what tomorrow brings. We've got day after tomorrow is the draft. It's an exciting time of year. A lot of stuff going on. We're going to be live during the draft as well, so you can come hang out with us for that. Let's go. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. This is the time we're here and ready to go. Like Trevor said, subscribe, like the videos, and turn on your notifications. So when we do go live, you guys are ready. You just jump in there with us. We've got a lot of stuff planned for you. It's going to be a weird week as far as shows go because we've got live stuff going on, and at the end of the week, we've got get free agency starting at the end of the weekend and all those things. But this is it. We're down to it. It's option season, it's draft season, and then free agency opening Sunday afternoon, which will be absolutely incredible, man. I cannot wait. And we're going to be here every single day, breaking it all down for you.
That's right. We'll be here for you again, guys. Make sure you subscribe. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.